Шампань, Арденны, Франция, Софийский университет, Болгария, университет Кадис, Испания, Северо-Западный политехнический университет, Джаутонг университет, КНР, МГУ, Россия. 7-й слайд. Мы стремимся к созданию и поддержке устойчивых партнерских отношений с ведущими университетами и научными центрами по всему миру. На сегодняшний день партнерский пул университета составляет более чем 700 успешно реализованных соглашений с высшими учебными заведениями и организациями Западной и Восточной Европы, Северной Америки, Азии и Тихоокеанского региона. Слайд 8. Ученые и преподаватели активно вовлечены в участие в международных проектах и грантах, как Erasmus, Fulbright, DAT, что позволяет нам интегрироваться в глобальное научное сообщество и способствовать продвижению наших исследований в международной арене. Слайд 9-11. В результате университет развивает инновационный потенциал, расширяет международное научно-техническое сотрудничество, привлекает финансовые ресурсы для реализации научных идей и продвижения результатов исследований на международном уровне, открывает совместные исследовательские центры. Совместный центр правовых исследований Китая и Центральной Азии, Сианским университетом ЦЕАТУН, совместный казахский исследовательский центр партнерства Пекинским университетом языка и культуры, совместная лаборатория технологии дистанционного зондирования их применения в Синьцзянским институтом экологии и географии Академии КНР, а также партнерство с международной исследовательской лабораторией Франции было инициировано открытие международной исследовательской лаборатории археозоологический центр по изучению Центральной Азии. Слайд 12-13. Отрадно, что реализуемые образовательные программы сопровождаются развитием научной базы университета. Среди них есть ключевые проекты, отражающие лидерство казну в науке и технологиях. Один из них – Центр инженерных компетенций в области промышленной робототехники и роботизации, открытие которого запланировано на январь настоящего года. Он станет первым в Центральной Азии, задавая высокие темпы и стандарты интеграции науки и производства. Здесь будут работать не только ученые нашего института, но и представители других отечественных вузов, объединяя усилия для решения стратегически важных задач. Уверен, что Центр станет катализатором новых открытий и инноваций, укрепит позиции Казахстана на глобальной научной арене. Слайд 14. Кроме того, возведен Центр инновационных продуктов Фараби Хаб площадью 500 квадратных метров, 5000. То есть. В нем сосредоточены научно-исследовательские институты, в которых реализуются высокотехнологичные проекты в сфере креативной индустрии, искусственного интеллекта и стартапов. Центр также включает современные лаборатории, выставочные и конференц-залы, создавая широкие возможности для инновационного взаимодействия и исследований. Слайд 15. Благодаря сотрудничеству Китайской Народной Республики университет располагает самым мощным в Центральной Азии суперкомпьютером с производительностью 2000 терaflops. Его использование позволяет успешно вести исследования в таких направлениях, как технологии искусственного интеллекта, биотехнологии в нефтегазовом секторе, а также в других стратегически важных сферах. Слайд 16. В университетском научно-производственном центре создаются гальванические покрытия для машиностроения, внедряются передовые технологии в реальный сектор. Таким образом укрепляется связь между наукой и производством. Слайд 17. Местом концентрации передовых технологий, разработкой инновационных решений стал кластер из 9 научных лабораторий Farabi Chem Science. В них разрабатывают огнестойкие покрытия, создают новые материалы для химических источников тока, а также медицинские и биологические средства. Слайд 18. Участвовавшиеся землетрясения, сильные паводки на западе республики, лесные пожары вызывают естественную тревогу населения. Ныне научное прогнозирование техногенных и природных катаклизмов актуально как никогда. В этой связи заслуживает особого внимания целенаправленная работа казахстанской китайской лаборатории технологий дистанционного зондирования и их применения. В составе факультета географии и природопользования создан научный центр устойчивого развития и рационального природопользования. Центр включает 10 инновационных лабораторий, занимающихся климатическими исследованиями, цифровой картографией, гидрологией, геоэкологией и другими направлениями. Слайд 19. Рынок труда будет требовать постоянного обновления навыков, что приведет к бурному росту микроквалификации. Возможно, сократятся сроки обучения по ряду направлений, особенно в IT-сфере. Искусственный интеллект и цифровые платформы не заменят людей, но те, кто владеет знаниями и компетенциями в их применении, будут более успешны в профессиональной сфере. Однако хочется верить, что автоматизация рутинных задач повысит ценность человеческих навыков, креативности, эмоционального интеллекта, межкультурной коммуникации. Казну имени Аль-Фараби не ждет будущее, он его создает. Через цифровизацию, глобальное партнерство и ориентацию на устойчивое развитие университет формирует среду, где студенты учатся решать задачи завтрашнего дня уже сегодня. Слайд 20-23. Университет активно трансформирует свою образовательную, научную и инфраструктурную систему, чтобы оставаться конкурентоспособным в условиях быстро меняющегося мира. Университет обладает уникальным в Казахстане учебным кампусом Красноградом, который в настоящий момент при поддержке государства находится на втором этапе строительства. Реализация этого масштабного проекта сделает университетский кампус по структуре сопоставимым с аналогичными кампусами ведущих зарубежных университетов. Слайд 24. Обучающий тренинг ICESCO по моделированию спутников «Консат» состоится в Казну имени Аль-Фараби в сентябре в рамках международного форума «Казахстан Space Days». Уважаемые коллеги, я хотел бы пригласить всех наших коллег присоединиться к этому тренингу. Уважаемые господа, коллеги, я хотел бы в конце несколько слов добавить, потому что ICESCO проводит прекрасный форум. Здесь вы объединились со всего мира ректоров, проректоров, ученых. Здесь как бы участвует, если по географически смотреть, Центральная Азия, Ближний Восток, Ближний Средний Восток, Дальний Восток, Африка. Я хотел бы пригласить всех активно сотрудничать друг с другом. Поэтому вчера я господину руководителю ICESCO говорил, создать, чтобы мы как бы один раз собрались и все оставили так, не должно быть. Чтобы мы создали общий сайт или чат ректоров в рамках ICESCO. Второе, почаще встречаться. Если первый день проводим в рамках в здании ICESCO, второй день можно было проводить только в Рабате. Очень много университетов в рамках одного из ведущих университетов. Третий – это посетить университетские кампусы, лаборатории, научные центры. И тогда наш форум был бы насыщенным. Поэтому я еще раз хочу выразить огромную благодарность руководству, организаторам данного форума. Я вчера тоже озвучил, следующий такого рода форумы в рамках ICESCO я приглашаю проводить в стенах нашего университета. Спасибо. Шукран джазилан.
Thank you, Excellency, for your inspiring leadership, for your focus on a global context, and for highlighting the need for enabling partnerships and collaborations, which is why we are here, which is why I am here, and of course you know very well that global challenges require global responses, and the ICESCO community is integral to that. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, now we move to the breakout parallel sessions So track F, globalization and compatibility of higher education in the Islamic world, will take place here, and breakout track D, research and innovation for impact, will take place in the DG meeting hall, and track E, building partnerships for climate resilience, will take place in the Solidarity Hall. So if you feel you need to be there, please, now is the time. So for track F, globalization and compatibility of higher education in the Islamic world, I'd now like to invite my co-chair, Professor Dr. Usman Ghani, to join me here. And our panel, if you could join me here also, Professor Tariq Obaideh, Dr. Firas Habal, Dr. Firas Habal, Professor Safi Kaskas, Professor Barki Osman Saeed, and that is our panel. So please join us here. And I'm now going to ask my co-chair, Dr. Ghani, to make an opening speech. We will wait for a moment or two for our other panelists. Maybe Dr. Shahid can provide some guidance. Yes, we'll take 1 minute. Thank you.
Hello.
I've been asked to remind everybody that this is track F, and track D takes place in the DG meeting hall, and track E takes place in the Solidarity Hall, which I believe are in that direction. Thank you. We will. So we shall begin, and as advertised, delighted to welcome Professor Dr. Usman Ghani, Director of the Institute for Management Sciences, in Peshawar in Pakistan, who will deliver the opening speech. Thank you. Doctor?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. We are going to have a discussion on a very important topic. And before that, you saw the presentation of the rector, Al-Farabi, Kazakh National University, which was very relevant to what we are going to discuss today. Globalization has transformed every aspect of society, from trade and technology to culture and education. And higher education in particular is no longer confined to national boundaries these days. Higher education systems around the world are increasingly influenced by globalization, which is marked by international collaborations, faculty and student mobility, cross-border research partnerships, and the adoption of global standards. So you can see that globalization has impacted every aspect of life, and education is not an exception. But in a situation in the Islamic countries, we are faced with a question that can higher education systems evolve in a way that makes them globally competitive, yet locally relevant. So the local relevancy is also very important. So we're going to discuss whether our universities are prepared for globalization. Do we have the resources? Are we making reforms and innovations? We just saw an example of the Al-Farabi Kazakh National Universities, and they have taken numerous steps to cope up with this and to be compatible with globalization. So we're going to discuss, are we ready, what we are doing, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and do we have some success stories? Do we have some examples? So we'll be focusing, on all these things. So my one question to all of you is that how do we position our universities globally? What interventions and what innovations and reforms we are implementing in our universities to be compatible at the global stage? So starting from you, sir.
Thank you very much. And again, an intriguing discussion. And of course, I'm bringing an Irish perspective. I'm from Dublin, graduated from University College Dublin, so delighted to be able to be part of what I see as a hugely important discussion with regard to global education in, of course, the Islamic world. But I suppose, just by way of continuing the discussion and dialogue, maybe there are universal challenges and universal opportunities that we need to take context of. So the point I would like to highlight then is, I suppose, in the challenge area, you mentioned standards, and our keynote speaker spoke a lot about AI and generative AI. And I think this is relevant for a number of reasons, but the reason I want to highlight is that, if you like, the many developed nations and blocs are advancing regulations in these areas. And for example, I'm from Europe, and the European Union last year enacted the Artificial Intelligence Act. And I think this is worth reflecting on for a couple of reasons. One, it's one example, not the only example, but it's one example of a drive for a global approach and a global standards in AI. And I think this is I think hugely important in a general sense. General sense, I mean that on a point of detail, some regulations, and in the case of the European Union regulations, if you look at the final page of these regulations, you will see that there is a text which says this regulation will have extraterritorial applications, which means they apply everywhere. And I think there are considerations around that. And I say to my friends in Europe, well, if you want to have regulations that apply globally, well, then you need to consult and engage with the global community. And I think that has not happened. So I'm raising this, A, so that you're aware, And again, I'm not going to get into the merits or otherwise of AI regulation. Some believe in it, others don't. I accept that. However, at a practical level and from a university community standpoint, I think it's hugely important to be aware of these regulations. And most importantly, I think it's very important that the university community input into these regulations and understand their application. And as the university community advances its scientific and research agendas, it's doing so with a very strong focus on artificial intelligence. But I would like to say, what is the relevance and how do regulations and legislation impact on the advancement of these technologies generally? And then, again, my specific point, how does the communities represented here today, what are the implications for them? How do they react to those? And how do they take a leadership role in global artificial intelligence regulation? So that's my suggestion. Oh, yes, and so I think that's important. And then you also talk about, you mentioned the importance of standards, and I think this, in a similar way, I'd like to highlight standards as an issue for the university community to be aware of. And my perspective on that, I was reading an article in the Financial Times a couple of weeks ago. The article was based on an interview with the Indian foreign minister. And of course, you will be very aware in these days that there is a lot of reference to multilateral system and the importance of a rules-based order. And he was agreeing with that. However, he said the multilateral system was designed essentially by developed nations 80 years ago and hasn't really adapted to include changes in the global community and the geopolitical evolutions that we have seen over the last maybe 30 or 40 years. And the point I'm making here with regard to standards is, again, standards essentially are designed by the North and imposed in the rest of the world. So my question to the university community is, how are you leading global standards? Where are you leading global standards? And what initiatives are you taking to be part of standards evolution? Particularly, but not only, particularly in the area of artificial intelligence. And there are many, many, many other areas. I don't have evidence in front of me, but from my exposure to working groups on standards, I'm estimating that the ICESCO community is not highly represented at this level. And of course, my reason for raising this is because I feel the community represented here should be involved in the evolution of global standards for all the very obvious reasons. So I think there may be challenges and then opportunities, really. I'll keep it brief. The opportunity I would suggest is then, as His Excellency highlighted in his remarks, is the focus on partnerships and collaborations. And I would say to you, you need a scientific approach to partnerships and collaborations. It takes time, it takes funding, it takes ideas. Before you get to the actual collaboration, you need to build trust. And that works at many, many levels. And I'm arguing for a global trust-based system. And I see ICESCO and the Islamic University leadership have a very critical role to play in that. And one reason for focusing on that currently is that next week, the United Nations in Seville will sit down to understand the next 10-year strategy for financing development. Education is a very, very important part of that. How do we look at the post-SDG agenda from the point of view of Islamic University leadership? What are the ideas you can contribute? How do those ideas translate into operational activities? And of course, then, how do we build communities where the Islamic research leadership is represented, not by exception, but by the rule? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. We are going to further explore on this, but my initial question was that, are we prepared? Where do we stand at the moment in terms of globalization? how much prepared we are, because what's happening around the world. So thank you for that. We'll come back to it. Sir, please, can you elaborate on this?
Actually, I'm going to go counter the direction of everybody here. For 2 days, I've been highly disappointed, generally, to see that we are talking as if we are all chasing globalization as defined by the West for us. For God's sake, we're Islamic universities. When are we going to wake up to positioning? You mentioned positioning. Positioning requires that we decide who we are, where we want to be, and who we are serving. If we are serving Islamic masses, I don't see any evidence of this. I see reimagining, and I thought we're going to be talking about what shape are we going to take in our institution to be special, to reflect who we are truly. But apparently, we're nowhere. I don't think any of us see himself different from the rest of Europe and the United States. And we are really running so hard to catch up. You're never gonna catch up. I got news for you. What you need to do, what I need to do, what every one of us need to do is to decide who we are. What is it that we want to be? Do we really have a distinguished personality as Muslim universities? Or we just have the word Muslim or Islamic for decor? Where's the substance? Where was the Quran in all of this in the last 2 days? A gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us. I don't see that we are appreciating that gift that much. We haven't even mentioned it. We talked about Islamic ethics. We talked about Islamicity. We didn't talk about the foundation given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to build our life on, which is the Quran. I'm very impressed with the Al-Farabi University model. On the world stage, it's doing a fantastic job competing and establishing itself. I saw a lot of positive signs in the particular example that we listened to this morning. I see a lot of cooperation, which is tremendous. But again, a year ago, alhamdulillah, last June, I should say, a year ago, I went to Pakistan and I talked about the same issues. And this year, Dr. Mukhtar assured me that they are going to start teaching the Quran as a foundational issue in all curriculums, from kindergarten all the way to doctorate degrees, each on its own levels. But if we're complaining about where we are today, it's because we're trying to catch up with somebody else and didn't decide who we really are and who we want to be. And I think once we decide who we are, then our role, everything else we need to do, our objectives, will be clear to us. But we need the vision first. Who are we trying to be? What is it that we want to accomplish? Do we want to just fit with the rest of the world, or do we want to serve our people? If we want to serve our people, we'll design one strategy, and if we just want to fit with the world, we'll have another strategy. It looks to me like we're trying to fit. We need to be unique because Allah created us as unique people. The Quran makes us unique unless, I don't blame a lot of people that don't know what I'm talking about when I say the Quran, because the meaning is ambiguous right now. Why? Because we haven't rolled our sleeves to get down to the ground floor and start looking at the Quran with contemporary eyes. If you don't see the Quran presenting you with solution to today's problem, you're not going to consider it at all. And I don't blame you. But the problem is not in the Quran. The problem is in lack of planning. We haven't planned to understand the Quran the way we should understand it, so we can build on that understanding and become distinguished. Then our positioning as Islamic university will make sense. Thank you very much. Keep it with me.
Thank you so much for your different version. I was going to discuss this aspect at the end, but you brought it a bit earlier. Same question to you. In your country or in your university, what actually interventions, innovations, or reforms you people are actually implementing to bring our universities at par with the global level?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghani, dear ladies and gentlemen. I'm Shabnam Safarova, it's my honor representing Baku State University. It is the oldest, the first, and for today is the biggest university of Azerbaijan. It has a legacy in education, research, and culture. And I want to pass on greetings of our rector, Mr. Elchin Babayev. Unfortunately, he couldn't participate here because of graduation ceremony, which will be held tomorrow for Baku State University. Again, it's my honor to represent my university here. About your question, how we meet the challenges in globalization. I think not only Baku State University, but Azerbaijan can be one of the best examples which can keep this balance in globalization. Our approach as a country and as a university is to keep your roots, but be open to the world. But globalization is not about forgetting your roots or your traditions or your values and principles. It is a mutually exclusive process, and when you are integrating, you are contributing your values and principles as well to the global world. That's why if you come to Azerbaijan, you can see this balance. You can see that, yes, everything is modern, the high-level education, high level of, let's say, community building, but we are keeping all this. You will feel that you are, as Mr. said, you are in a unique place, and it has own approach, it has own values and principles. As Baku State University, this year we will have 106 years. I don't think that we are beginning to globalize nowadays. We have a really very good research culture, and we have Nobel Prize prized alumni. That's why globalization is not new for us. But how we are tracking the new challenges, it is about following global standards about educational processes. I don't think that, for example, SDGs, sustainability rules, or global educational or research standards, they are not against of traditional view of our countries. And especially as a middle of East and West, Asia and Europe. So we feel it actually that it is not so, how can I say, globalization is a natural process, but how you will contribute to this process, that's the question. And we have Excellence Center within Baku State University, and Baku State University is one of the 2 research universities in Azerbaijan. And I think the best way of global contribution, communication, or cooperation, it's research. For example, for nowadays, we had a meeting with one of the big universities in Pakistan, and we are going to build twin laboratories. What does it mean? For example, sometimes it's hard to go to Pakistan, or they come to us, but we build twin laboratories in Baku State University and, let's say, Lahore University, and our researchers simultaneously, they are making research in these labs, and they are working on publications, scientific publications. I think the best way of globalization for us, it is research, collaboration in research, and actually the results of this research has to be product as in spin-off projects, as a startups, businesses, which will commercialize all these processes, because if you cannot commercialize, it will not be sustainable. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the panels. I'm from University Technology Malaysia. I can see that I'm the only Malaysian for these 3 days, because I'm expecting 2 more representatives from Malaysia, but didn't come for some reasons. But anyway, answering your questions, globalization is there, it's happening, it's a long time. With the developments of transportation fast, people moving, and the ICT is growing, people communicating even without physically is there, something that is not unavoidable. The question that we always ask, first, we have to accept that we have to be open. We have to open to everyone. But the next question is how much you want to open. Yeah? Why I'm posing this question is because we come from different so-called roots, it's just culturally roots or religious roots. Thank you, Prof. Safi, for highlighting somehow for these 2 days, we are not, I like the provoking thought that you have. Somehow, why we are not to dare to say we are rooted to the divine revelation, the Quran. Why we are afraid of saying that, stating clearly that, because that is our roots, because everyone I believe in this room believe there's 2 worlds. We have this world and we have hereafter. So whatever that you do now is going to carry for hereafter as well. So if we can carry that objective as the purpose of life, I think we are going to move differently. That's the first one, okay. Second one, at the university, I'm not representing Malaysia, but for the university, we are open, just to share with you that last time the policy for university, we only limit for undergraduate, only 10% international students last time. But now you can open to as many as you want, as the university allows you, and you have the facility to do that. So that means we are responding positively towards the openness of the world now. That's the first one. If you're talking about collaborations, most of the laboratory in the University of Malaysia, we open to all the international collaborations, and we can see the researchers from internationals are coming, and some of them stay for a long term in Malaysia as well to do the research work. But the next question I always ask is, yes, research is 2 things. I think the panels yesterday also mentioned about. The first one is fundamental research, basically advancing on knowledge. The second one, applied research. The applied research usually you're talking about the output of the research, which is quite immediate. You're talking about a startup and so on, yeah? So usually we're talking about the research and startups. This is where I think the impact of globalizations play a very important role. Because one of the parameters when you want to do the startup is the market size and so on. And then if you're talking about the Muslim world, yesterday we mentioned about 2.3 billion population. That's the market size is good enough, yeah. But again, we also have to believe that the majority theory doesn't say that majority wins. It's only the quality wins. It doesn't have majority. It's a quality wins. We know the war of Badr. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sahabi, they only have very minority, but they want. Yeah, so the thing is, we have an advantage of numbers, but I think with the globalization, we need to move forward this to improve the quality of the network that we have among us in such a way that the purpose of education, higher education as a whole, we can move forward. And again, it's rooted to what the divine revelation of the Quran, and then inshallah we're going to be safe here and hereafter, inshallah. Thank you.
So, we've been discussing this globalization, and generally the perception is that by that mean partnerships with Western universities. But I foresee a lot of potential in universities in the Muslim world. We have got some very good universities, very good faculty and resources. But I don't see that collaboration amongst the Muslim universities, across the Islamic world. And that's, I think, what you are pointing out. And when we talk of globalization, we do not necessarily mean that we adopt the Western system as it is. Of course, we have our own culture, our own religion, our own values. That local context is always there, and it has been very important. Since nobody else on the panel is representing Pakistan, I'll just briefly share what actually we are doing in Pakistan at the moment. The Higher Education Commission has taken a number of steps. We have recently introduced a quality assurance, a revised quality assurance framework that we actually, Higher Education Commission has developed along with the Quality Assurance Agency UK. So that makes it more compatible because, when students go abroad and they go for jobs or for further study. So this actually is at the international level. We have established our own accreditation bodies, which are local accreditation bodies, and they ensure that the standards are met by the universities. We have recently introduced our TNE policy, the transnational education policy, where we are encouraging foreign universities to come to Pakistan, and we are encouraging our universities to go abroad. And they have different models under this TNE system. Also, there has been a number of mobility programs that are being funded by the Higher Education Commission and with the help of British Council. So a lot of effort is going on actually to make our system compatible at the global level, so our students can compete at the global level. And a number of universities have started collaborations with foreign universities. We're starting this program articulation, which is a 2+2 year degree or 3+1 dual degree programs. So those things are actually happening in Pakistan. But I see a lot of potential in our universities, collaborating with Islamic universities. As I said, we have got very highly qualified faculty. And the biggest problem, as I foresee in collaborations with the foreign Western universities, is the fee, the funding. That's a major issue. But in countries like ours, I think the fee in Pakistan is very, very low. It's very, very reasonable. I was talking to some students of Morocco yesterday outside, and they could not believe it, what actually we're charging. The living expenses, the tuition fee. And we have, yesterday you saw the Chairman Higher Education announced a number of scholarships. And I think we need to disseminate this information and we need to make this information available to students. And I think this exchange between the faculty and students in the Islamic world should be the first step, I think, that we need to take. So what is your intake on this? How do you foresee these collaborations?
Thank you for your very wise words. Actually, wisdom, as I understand it from the Quran and Sunnah, is to find what works best and adopt it. In that sense, I would like to point to everybody what's going on in Pakistan in the field of education at this time. I'm not a Pakistani. I'm originally from Lebanon. And I've been living in the United States since 1969, middle of last century. Yet, today, among all the Muslim countries in the world, Pakistan represents hope for me. Why? Because of the actual performance on the ground, trying to position themselves where they should be. If you identify yourself as an Islamic republic, you need to translate that into action. If the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and that's the official name, by the way, for those who don't know, and many people told me, are they really called Islamic Republic? Yes, they are. And I didn't choose that, they did. In the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, if the International Islamic University in Islamabad ultimate hope is to look like Harvard, they will never look like Harvard, because this is a different time, a different place, different world, and they need to decide for themselves who they really are. Look, in the United States, I started the first university in 1980. It opened, actually, in 1980, East-West University in Chicago. And we wanted to be smart and practical at that time, and we decided to follow the model of the American University of Beirut. The American we're talking positioning here. You mentioned positioning, and I love that because I'm a strategist. The American University in Beirut is very successful, maybe the most successful school in the Middle East, maybe. But they didn't start as the American University in Beirut. They started as the Evangelical Mission in Beirut. Then a few years later, they decided it's not going to sell this way. We don't want to box ourselves in one area. So they changed the name. So we thought East-West University will learn from the example of the American University in Beirut, and we will be a secular university. We'll teach what sells. We'll cater to students looking for a career after 4 years of higher education. And we did that, and we're successful. We're regretting that right now because Islam is missing there. Now I'm starting another university with a group of enthusiastic Muslims from Dallas, Texas, called TexAm University. Now we're trying to learn again from the mistakes of Chicago, and Islam will be foundational. The Quran will be foundational. And I am absolutely sure that we will have close cooperation with universities in Pakistan because we want to learn. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And for those, word of advice, for those who are looking today to simply fit and to catch up and to excel, Al-Farabi University is an excellent example that to cooperate with. No one needs to reinvent the wheel. We need to take leaps, and those leaps will be to work with a successful model. So this is basically where I'm coming from. I already have hands-on experience in starting 2 universities, and I know if we want to identify in our uniqueness as Muslims, we need to have the Quran as foundational on every level of education. But not the Quran alone. It will not work. You need the Quran and STEAM. Some people call it STEM. I add the A because we cannot do without art. Yeah. So we're with the Quran plus STEAM, then we'll have a comprehensive approach to education from kindergarten to postdoctorate. Thank you very much.
One of my questions is like looking ahead 10, 15 years, what is your vision for the future of higher education in the Islamic world within the global landscape? How do you see universities in Islamic world in the next 10 to 15 years? Where do you want to see them actually? What they need to do to be globally compatible, in the next 10 to 15 years?
Thank you very much. I suppose that the perspective I would take is what is the role of universities? And I think one of the roles of universities anywhere in the world is to help address global challenges. I think that's a premise I would promote. And if that premise is accepted and acceptable in the many, many areas that we don't need to enumerate here, well, then collaboration is very necessary, very necessary. I think what's not happening, as I mentioned earlier on, is this global coalition of universities
promoting policy agendas at global level. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening with universities to the extent that I think it's necessary. I don't see it working at a regional level either. And one of the reasons I set up the Science Summit at the United Nations General Assembly is because I feel that science and innovation has not been reflected in the Millennium Development Goals, nor in the Sustainable Development Goals. And my urgent concern is that science will not be reflected in the post-SDG agenda. So I simply feel that cooperation is very necessary for the reasons that I mentioned. I feel there are not sufficient fora to promote this cooperation from the university sector. I think there are regional fora, but not global fora for universities. And I sometimes also feel that universities, with reference to the recent university league tables, are perhaps too focused on rankings and numerical outputs. I think universities have a wider role to play. So I think collaboration is absolutely necessary, and my exhortation is for the community here, and indeed others, to really find ways to do that and to translate that into policy priorities. I think we need to define the contribution of universities to the post-SDG agenda. That then needs to be part of the United Nations Pact for the Future. And I really feel that's a global ambition, that's a global exercise. And I think if we can come up with a narrative that works for everybody in terms of the objectives, then I think the cooperation will be a natural consequence of that, recognizing the regional interest and cultures and religions, that they will all be part of these communities and they can be accommodated within that, in my view. And I think so. It's policy. And when I talk about policy, again, just let me reiterate the importance of the university community globally addressing the onset of regulation by the West, which is imposed everywhere else. I don't think that is good practice. I'm not trying to present that in terms of good or bad or right or wrong, but I am saying it's another manifestation of exclusion. And of course, you'll read the European Union press releases, and it'll tell you about the importance of standards and global standards and advancing standards. That's fine if you own the standards, but what about everybody else who don't own the standards, by which I mean weren't involved in the design? And remember, the evolution of a technology standard might take 8 years, yeah? 2-3 years of working group preparation, 4 years of the operation of the working group, and then the adoption of the standard. And as I said, I think, in my view, that the Islamic research community and other forms of Islam are not in that process. And again, I'm not being prescriptive in terms of saying what the outcomes from that will be, but I am saying if you're not at the table, then you are being excluded. So I think that's hugely, hugely important. And again, when it comes to artificial intelligence, and we heard that this is an area where regulation is going to be pervasive. And of course, when we talk about AI regulation, we're talking about the impact of regulation on access to data at global level. So when we come to, again, global concepts such as digital infrastructures, then we recognize that they are going to be enabled by data. And if in some parts of the world, some groups are trying to regulate that data, that's going to have negative impacts, in my view, on other communities. So the universities, in response to your question, have to take a leadership role here, and the community represented, as I said before, represented here today, have a unique perspective to bring to this. Because again, regulation, it's a cultural exercise, it's a regulatory exercise, it's an exercise in law, it's an exercise in partnerships and collaborations. These all matter. And again, we need to see leadership coming. Thank you.
Can you elaborate on the future that you foresee for universities in Islamic world in the next 10, 15 years? Where do you want to see universities?
As I mentioned, you can consider Azerbaijan like Islamic country as well, because the most part of population are Muslims, in our country. And for our perspective, I think we have, it depends on today's actions and processes, actually. So, for example, I think information has to be achievable, you know. There is a big stereotype about Islamic countries, actually, not only by the side of Western countries, but inside of Islamic countries, between countries, we have some stereotypes. For example, as I came to Morocco, it is also most part of population are Muslims, but I didn't have any imagination about this country, but we have brothers and sisters here, actually. So that's why, to break stereotypes in this order, one of the best tools are exchange programs, double-degree diplomas, collaboration in research, mobility programs. It is my personal opinion. It is not opinion of Bako State University. I think that Erasmus actually is not educational mobility program. It is cultural mobility program, because when our students, they go to Europe, they know that the lifestyle, the traditions, more than the educational, let's say, classes or actually the science education. They are interested in culture. They are interested in lifestyle. But I think such mobility programs within Islamic countries can help us to break these stereotypes, actually, first of all. The second, it is, as a representative of higher education institution, it is, I feel the challenge in building double-degree diplomas, because sometimes financial basement or let's say jurisdictional basement, they don't let us to build such programs. That's why we have to recognize the qualifications between OIC countries, and we have to ease the processes to make simple processes for this collaboration. Sometimes it's too hard to build unique educational programs, equalize credit systems, equalize educational systems. That's why we're eager to standardize all these processes for making it much more easier. So that's why, again, I will stay on research, because it's the only way to, if you don't see result, you will not follow this way, you know? And education is a process, but the research will take us to the result. This result is product. For example, can you call me a well-known or worldwide startup project by OIC countries, members, universities? You know, it's hard. But do we have research? Yes, we have. So why we cannot finalize this process and make a product, we have to think about it. And if we think about all these challenges, and if we change our approach today, the 10 years or 15 years after today will look like to our today's operations. Thank you very much.
Okay, I really want to bring to discussion the point that I had a chance to talk to one of the founders of the OpenAI. So I thought one of the founders is no longer in OpenAI. The view is rather critical in say that in the next 5 years, no one send their children to university. That's even more, I think, challenging. Yeah. So when I asked why you're not sending your children to university, because they say that what you're looking for in a university. So why do I have to send my children to university? Everything's available. AI is going to give you everything a lot, because the ChatGPT is just the beginning. There's going to be more and more. So if you are going to send your children to university, what do you want? I just want them to socialize, only that. But the rest they can get it somewhere else. And that's true now. So coming back to this point of view, I view in the future somehow the Islamic values in education can be spread and understood more positively. So that means we need to take a more positive action in terms of embedding Islamic value in all the higher education activities. If we're talking about academics, we're talking about academics, we have standards and so on, but also the local standard associated with that, where you can infuse the values, your local values inside there. Of course, we comply with this international standard, but the local standard also have to be complied as well. And then when we are in Islamic countries, also the values about the same, and it's easy for us to go to your country and get the same accreditation and so on. The process should be eased and so on. And it's talking about the research output, the collaboration. We are talking about solving problems. I think yesterday one of the panels pointed out that education is no longer about the grades, it's about your problem-solving skill, because we are in the world now, we are solving problems as we discussed now. So I'm hoping that in the future, in that 10, 15 years, somehow Islamic education can offer a good framework to bring the next generation to solve any problems, or to bring education with infused strong Islamic values inside there, with being understood positively from any other parts of the world. Thank you.
So much. I think we need to wrap up, but I could, what I summarize today's discussion is that yes, we have to be globally competitive. But for that to start, we need to start, with the collaborations among the Muslim countries. There's a lot of potential, and I think ICESCO can play the role of a mediator between all the Islamic countries. It's a big platform that we can use. As Pakistan announced yesterday, a number of scholarships. We can have a program like Erasmus amongst the Islamic countries, where we, at the least, we can have a semester exchange program for our students so that they move to their brotherly Muslim countries and they see what's happening there. And so I see a lot of potential, but all we need to do is to mobilize, all these efforts, and we need a platform, and ICESCO can, I think, provide a good platform for that. Digital, globalization is very easy. When we talk about funding, that makes it difficult, but I think the digital and the platforms, they can make these efforts easy because it doesn't cost. You don't have to at times move out of your country, but still you can utilize the resources. So these are, and again, as you mentioned, when we talk about globalization, it does not necessarily mean that we move away from our values. We need to benefit from the good things that we can get anywhere, but simultaneously, we need to keep our local traditions, our local culture, our values intact, and that's what is more important, in current circumstances. So I'm extremely grateful to all of you for your thoughts, for your points, and let's hope that the discussion today that we had some have positive impact. Thank you so much.
Well, we'll take all photos. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this formal one.